What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Point2Point NHL Recap Show, Season 2, Episode 22. Mark, this season, dude, it's feeling like it's absolutely flown by, bro. We're in the last, 10 or so games of the season. How are you feeling, though, dude?
Dude, feeling pretty good. It's like I feel like the last couple of years I've kept saying this is going to be, or this has been kind of the best season yet, but I feel like that it has been kind of the best season. It's been improving every year, I feel like, in accordance to entertainment, moves around the NHL, you know what I mean, and kind of the parity of some teams getting in when you don't think they will, or vice versa. And I know that happens every year, but I mean, it just seems like at least this logjam in the East is making it really interesting. And man, it's not as many teams in the West, but it's still a fight between a couple teams, dude. It's not just like one or two teams battling. There's like three or four, right? So, I mean, not everyone's out of it. I'm really kind of entertained here the last 3 weeks of the season to see how this plays out. How you feeling about the Flames and the NHL overall right now?
Overall, for the NHL, I agree with you, dude. These are sort of logjam in the East and somewhat in the West. Like, every night there's games, dude. There's like 2 or 3 games that are actually like pretty crucial to the standings and how things are going to work out for the playoffs, right? So I know even this week, like, Flames and Rangers were playing the one night, and then you have like Montreal playing, so it's like you're kind of flipping between those two games. Keep an eye on both. Like, dude, I'm loving that every night there's like a couple games where it's like, man, like, which one do I want to watch tonight? You know, which one has bigger implications on the standings? And you're almost kind of, if you're watching one game, you're almost kind of scoreboard watching the other game, right? Like, every night I'm scoreboard watching, looking at the standings, seeing fully what's going on. I'm loving it, dude. Overall for the Flames, man, I'm feeling iffy. I'm feeling iffy right now, to be honest, dude.
The goal scoring is 100% a huge concern, right? You almost need a Wolf or Vladar to bail you out every game to get a win, and that's definitely a bit of a concern.
Yeah, it's kind of been that all year, and we've kind of survived. But now it's like you're gonna have like a game or two here, right, where you're not gonna get bailed out by our goaltenders, and like that's fair, right? Like, they're not. I don't think you can expect 82 games of pure excellence in the net in the NHL season, right? So it's like, I think that's what it's going to be for the Flames. I think they're going to miss the playoffs just because they don't have enough goal scoring. Like, I believe I was looking at point totals for players earlier this year. I believe Jonathan Huberdeau might be our leading scorer. Right? And it's like,
I think so too. I know he probably has at least the most goals, right? I think he's got 27.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure about points. I know Kadri's in is he probably like upper 50s or lower 60s at this point.
Yeah.
But for that to be your leading score is a little bit concerning, especially if you do get into the playoffs. But you never know, man. The way Wolf's been playing, like, it's still very possible that you guys could get in.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. Honestly, dude, I've been more tuned in on your Montreal Canadiens than my Calgary Flames this past week, just with how you guys have been playing. Like, it was 3 games in a row, dude, where you guys were down at some point in the game, and I'm like, oh man, like, Montreal really needs to win this, dude. And then next thing you know, they score, they come back, they either pick up the win or get a point in overtime, which has been crucial to where you guys are at in the standings. How are you feeling about your Canadians, though, dude?
I mean, I don't know. It's tough, right? Like, we're on a little bit of a losing streak here, but like you said, we battled back, and it's like you want to see that pushback, and especially on Saturday, like against Colorado, dude, a team that's been like really pouring it on lately. It shows that this team's not willing to give up, and it did suck losing in the shootout, but dude, we would have been out of a playoff spot if we didn't force that game to OT, right? So it's just like, get these points when you can. And like, I think it was Sarah Valley made a good point. He's like, man, you're going to lose games on this last stretch to make the playoffs if you're any team, but if you're able to force it to overtime and get a point, it makes such a big difference. And I couldn't agree more, dude. I really hope that they're able to get a couple wins this week and kind of stay on the hunt here. They've got a pretty good percentage chance of getting in the playoffs, but it's not going to be easy, man. Just because we've been playing well recently doesn't mean that we're going to continue to play well down the stretch, right? We could go through a little funk. You never know. But I think if we keep playing in accordance to the way that the effort's there, I think we'll be okay. And I think we do have a good chance of getting in.
Yeah, you guys are on a little bit of a losing streak, but hey, over your last 10, dude, you're 5-1-4. So it's like you guys are picking up points.
That's what I mean. That's one game we didn't get a point.
Yeah, which
like that's 14 of a possible 20 points, and we only won 5 games. Like, I'll take that, man. Like,
it's crucial what you guys are doing. Well, let's get going though in today's episode with the season sort of coming to an end here. We're going to be going through all the awards and sort of giving our top five, just because there still could be a little bit of a change between like some of the awards on who could come third or second, right? So we're going to do that. We have created a couple of our own awards that we're going to hand out, and we would probably like to see the NHL maybe bring on some of these awards. So let's get right into
100%.
it and start off with the first one. It's the Jack Adams. Mark, my winner of the Jack Adams this year, it's got to go to Spencer Carberry, I think. I think this one's a runaway. Who do you have winning it, though?
I also have Spencer Carberry. I feel like I know last year doesn't really matter, but I feel like he was kind of snubbed out of a vote getting the team in last year. And I think that there were a couple of people that expected the moves in the offseason to turn out well, but I would say most of us didn't. That they didn't think that they were probably going to make the playoffs this year. Maybe a bit too much turnover. Maybe people thought it was lucky the way they got into the playoffs, but I mean, they've been dominant, dude. Like this is a team that's fighting for the President's Trophy here. I know a lot of guys are having career years, but I mean, you could also maybe point that to the coach and the way he's kind of approaching these players. I don't know about you, dude, if you ever see these clips after the games of like Carberry in the room talking to the guys, but it feels like the camaraderie in that room. Like everyone just loves each other. It seems like they love playing for Carberry and they're like buying into this system. And I don't know if you remember earlier in I think it was December or January, they had the first like kind of blip of the year. And it was like they were still 5-3-2. And Carberry came out in a press conference and he says, are we going to be remembered as a team that got off to a hot start and then fumbled? Or are we going to be a team that everyone's going to remember that is potentially being dominant all year? And I think he really challenged his players to really think about that, knowing, yeah, we're probably going to get in the playoffs, even if we do go on a skid. But they didn't really do that after that, man. They've been a really dominant team. I didn't really think they had to do much of the trade deadline, minus maybe they could have got a third line center. But I really like the way Carberry's going here. And honestly, I think he's a huge favorite right now to win this award.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me with Carberry in Washington is that, like, dude, at points last year when we were talking about this Washington Capitals team, there was some talk like, oh man, it's kind of just going to be like the Ovechkin goal chase and then like right off in the sunset, and then their team's going to be terrible for years afterwards, right? Like there was some talk about that last year, and you look at what they did over the offseason, you look at this year, man, and they're the best team in the NHL this year, right? Like to have that kind of flip around, like you really got to be able to run your locker room, and I think at this point he's locked up. He's locked up the award. I don't think it's going to be too close. Second on my list, I'll go through my 2 and 3 here because these guys I could flip flop them depending on how the season ends. But second on my list, I got Martin St. Louis of the Montreal Canadiens, and then third I got Dean Evison of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I will say, depending on how the season goes, I might flip flop those two. So if Columbus gets in and Montreal misses, then I probably flip flop those two. But I got St. Louis too, just because Montreal's in that wild card spot right now. I think they're going to hold on to it. So I got those two as my other two finalists. Who's your two finalists?
So, I mean, like I said, it's a decently big drop off after number one.
Yeah.
Number two, though, I'm going to give it to Scott Arniel with Winnipeg. I think that him coming in as a past assistant coach to coach this team after they did have a really good regular season last year, faltered in the playoffs. Didn't really change too much with the systems, but I feel like it's not easy for an assistant to step into a head coaching role, especially on a team that's already really good and being able to find success. This team is potentially going to be winning the President's Trophy this year. I really like what he's done. And I feel that there are some guys that are maybe stepping up more than they did even last year. And I maybe even would credit that to Arniel. Like, I love Scheifele, dude, but he was never really scoring at the same rate that he is right now, right? He's looking a lot better this year. I look at a guy like Dylan Sandberg, dude. He's taken a massive step to become like a top 4 defensive defenseman. He's given guys more opportunities. It's paying off. They're one of the best, if not the best defensive team in the NHL. And honestly, I really feel like he should be nominated for this award.
Yeah, I'm with you, dude. I just had him outside my I had him just outside. I have him at 4.
Okay, I'll go with my number 3 as well now, since you've already done your number 3. This one might surprise you a little bit, but I'm going with Rod Brind'Amour in Carolina. The reason why I'm picking Rod Brind'Amour is I don't think people realize the amount of turnover Carolina had from last year to this year, the amount of players that went out the door. Bunch of guys came in. He also had to deal with the Mikko Rantanen factor, dude. It didn't really work out here. And what happens? They trade him away. They've gone on an 8-game winning streak. Like, it seems like guys minus Mikko Rantanen have kind of come into the system and they want to buy into what he's doing. And Carolina's not going to be winning the division, but they're a really good team still, man. And I honestly didn't feel like they were going to be as good this year as they were last year, but it doesn't really feel like they're much worse, if they are even at all.
Yeah.
Compared to last year? Like, I don't know. Like, did you feel like they're a worse team? I don't really think so.
And over the past month or so, man, they've been on a pretty big tear here. Like, they've been playing a lot better here, sort of since trade deadline. I think Rob Brind'Amour having him in there is pretty safe. Like, I think you sort of have the top dog in Cardberry. You kind of have like a couple more, and then you probably have like 3 or 4 guys there that are all like pretty close, right? And I think a lot's going to depend on how the season ends with who's going to be the other 2 finalists, right? Like, as I mentioned, like, if Columbus misses the playoffs, maybe Everson isn't even a finalist, right? Like, maybe it is more, depending on how strong they finish. Who do you have at your 4 and 5 though?
So 4 right now, I've got Travis Green with Ottawa. I think that he's kind of came in, and Ottawa's playing a whole different system this year. They're a lot more defensive and scoring less, but defense helps win championships, dude. It seems like this team's much more ready for the playoffs this year, and I got to give Travis Green some props, man. I don't think a lot of people thought that was the right hire, and it seems like it's working out so far. And then number 5, I'm going to have to go with my boy Marty St. Louis. I think he's just been doing a great job. I've got him a little bit lower on the list just because I'm not as confident as the other ones, and even Travis Green that Montreal's getting in. I'm not too sure if he'd get a nomination if he ends up getting in, but I think that, bro, people were calling for this guy's job when the Habs were like 16th in the East. And it's like, man, fucking take a chill pill here. Like, this team is in the development stage right now. And I think that a lot of guys have improved a lot this season, or maybe even gotten back to the level that they once were. And I got to give props here to Marty St. Louis.
That's a fair list. For me, at my number 5, I got Ryan Husk of the Calgary Flames. I just think when you look at this team and sort of the success that they have had this year, they realistically, like, with the roster they had going into this season, like, a lot of people did not think they were going to be near a wild card team, right? Like, I think me and you on our season previews, we both had them like picking top 5 this year, and now you look at them, they're a couple points out of that second wild card spot, right? So for him, when you look at the Calgary Flames, like, these are players that sort of from day one of the season really bought into his system, bought into the whole underdog mentality, these low-scoring games, and I think for that reason, I kind of have him at number 5. But then again, there's so many guys that are so close there, like Travis Green. That's a pretty good pick. Rob Brind'Amour, right? Like, that's a guy I probably could have had there in my top 5 here. For me, it's just I'm also going with the guys I feel that aren't on teams where you have these amazing rosters, right? Or these
that's
rosters. Fair. Let's move on to the next award. The next award we're going to go to is the Jim Gregory Award. That's given out to the General Manager of the Year. Mark, who do you have winning this award?
I actually had a tough time like picking a clear-cut winner here. I mean, this is a hard award to kind of predict right now, because this award is voted on once the top 4 teams are in the conference finals, and it usually is that the 3 of the 4 GMs are in nomination for the award. Yeah. I just kind of went on what I'm predicting to happen in accordance to like the playoffs. Number 1, I'm going to go with Bill Zito, like Seth Jones, Brad Marchand, even like that. I love that Nico Sturm as their 4th line center as well. Yeah. I know they gave up a lot for Seth Jones, but I mean, I think that he kind of put his team in a good position where I was almost like, I don't really think they're a huge threat. And then now I'm like, these guys might be the top dog in the East. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go with Bill Zito winning this award last year, but I will say he didn't really pop to my head right away. Like, I didn't going into picking the nominations for this award, I didn't really have a clear-cut winner, I felt like.
For me, I got a clear-cut winner. It might be a hot take, but it's the Washington Capitals. When you
See, I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I highly considered that, and I did not realize that after the draft last year and the initial signings and trades they made that they changed GMs. So Chris McFarland, sorry, I don't. What is the guy's name in Washington that you
Chris
thought it
Patrick.
was? So Chris Patrick actually did not make any of those moves. He made moves more in season. It was the guy they had before. Why am I blanking on his name?
I'm trying to look at this. Yeah, Chris Patrick was
Brian McClellan. Brian McClellan, that was the guy. So he made the moves, like the draft and the couple moves they made in the like before free agency, like the Thompson trade, the Chikrin trade, and then I'm pretty sure, on July 8th, Chris Patrick became the GM.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you want to kind of say you're giving like a joint award to the both of them, I mean, I can't really disagree with that. But that actually made me change my mind when I saw this.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Brian McClellan. Then we'll give it to him. We'll let him split.
Give the GM award to the president. He's the president of hockey ops now. But dude, I get the mentality around it. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like if this didn't happen, he probably would be my clear cut favorite. But yeah, honestly, dude, I didn't really know about this till like last week. Actually, like I didn't even realize that they had a new GM.
Neither did I. Honestly, I was looking at the list of GMs across the entire NHL, and I kind of missed the start date on that one, but.
Yeah, so technically he made some of the moves, which were good, but he didn't make like the majority of the moves, like drafting Cole Hudson, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So, I mean, if you like kind of give it to McClellan, Patrick, I mean, I could see that happening.
I'd sort of just give it to them based off like how good of a retooling they did with this team over the offseason. At my 2, I got Chris McFarland in Colorado. I think what they sort of did this year with completely revamping their goaltenders. Like at the start of the season,
revamping their goaltenders, dude. They revamped half the roster.
I think it all started with the goaltenders, though, right? Like,
yes,
15 games in, we're talking about like, holy shit, Colorado like might not make the playoffs because they can't get a fucking save. Next thing you know, they're bringing in Blackwood. He's looked phenomenal since being there, right? You bring in Brock Nelson, you bring in Nichas and send out your star player in or one of your star players in Mikko Rantanen, right? Like I think that takes a lot of balls to do. Sort of some of the moves that he made this year, and I think all of them have really paid off for this team. And now we're talking about them as being like a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. For me, I got to go with McFarland in my 2 spot. Who did you go with in your 2 spot, though?
I also had him as well. I think that, yeah, the Mikko Rantanen trade, I mean, I don't really think the value was top notch, but Natchez is looking pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that what they were able to give up to get Blackwood was not too big of a price, and they've kind of reinvented down the middle too. Like you went from Middlestat, like Ross Colton kind of came into the year as the 3C, but I think it was the injuries. He's been more of a winger. And then 4th line center was, dude, it was a fucking question mark all year. Is it Chris Wagner? Is it Parsonen? Now you've got McKinnon, Nelson, Charlie Coyle, Jack Drury. I don't mind that at all, dude. That's a hard position to rebuild. I think that, I'm going to be honest, dude, if you put him at number 1, I really wouldn't even be that like opposed to it either. Like I think that, especially if they do have success down the road, that he will be a pretty solid pick and to win this award this year.
The other thing too is that you mentioned is a Rantanen trade. Yeah, they didn't get as much back, but I also am partially looking at it where if they still had Rantanen, they might not have that cap flexibility to bring in Brock Nelson, right? Where them getting rid of Rantanen, you're getting a Nichas who's been phenomenal for him so far, and then it really does give them the flexibility to do some more things like bring in the Brock Nelson, bring in Charlie Coyle, right? I think what he's done so far for this team, it's been phenomenal. Mark, who do you have at your 3 spot?
Number 3. This is where it got a little bit tougher for me. I just think because of the impact of the trade that it will be down the road, I went with Jim Nill in Dallas. He's won this award the back-to-back years. I feel like the difference that I have him at 3, even though like he's kind of acquiring the best player this season, is that I still don't absolutely love the right side of their defense. I feel like if they made an improvement to get like a solid top 4 guy, I'd probably have him winning this award, to be honest with you. But I still think bringing in a guy like Mikko Rantanen, and like as much as I love Logan Stankoven, you didn't really subtract at least a lot off your roster like at the moment. You know what I mean? So he's putting them in a very good position to win the Stanley Cup this year, and I think he's going to be a nomination for this award for the 3rd year in a row.
Yeah, for me at 3, I have the guy that you have winning it. I got Bill Zito. You look at the trades he made come trade deadline, bringing in Seth Jones, you bring in Brad Marchand. Like, nobody saw that coming, right? I think he, over the last few seasons, makes big moves, isn't scared to do that, like, isn't scared to shake things up. I think he's done a phenomenal job this year with what he's brought in, and I got him at the 3 spot. I will say, though, I do think, for me, any one of my top 3 could win, depending on what plays out between now and the conference finals, right? Like, I don't think it's maybe as much of a lock as I'm thinking with the Washington thing, right? Because if not, it's also hard too, because if 2 of these teams don't make the conference finals, then it's like, well, it's going to be kind of hard to vote them in, right? But who do you have 100%. At your 4 and 5 spot here?
So 4 and 5, I have got. I think people are really going to disagree with me on this, but I went with Eric Tulsky. I just think, like I said, with the Brendamore thing, the amount of players that he brought in the offseason because guys were either going to get paid too much money somewhere else, you know what I mean? And then, yeah, okay, you can look at it in the sense they probably didn't win the Rantanen trade, but they got a good return for him, man. And they set themselves up pretty good for the future here. I don't think at the end of the day he'll end up being nominated. That's why I kind of got him in this 4 spot. But I think there should be some recognition shown, and I think his legacy for this season shouldn't just be looked at the Rantanen trade. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He also became the GM like 6 days before free agency last year. Yep. Had barely any time to figure all this shit out. And it's just like, I look at shit like this, dude. It's like Brady Shea leaves. He gets a 7x7. Who do you bring in to replace him? Shane Gostisbehere. You give him half the money. And he's probably not the exact same player, but he's working well in that system. You know what I mean? And it's like little guys for depth. It's like Eric Robinson comes in, like not big names, man, but it's working out for them in this system. And this is going to be completely off the board for my number 5. I'm going with Mike Grier in San Jose, bro. I know that GMs don't usually get nominated for this award if they're bad, but I just feel like his asset management has been terrific. And I think people are looking at this San Jose rebuild completely different than they were probably 12 months ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mike Grier's a pretty good pick. For my 4 and 5, I also kind of went off the board. At 4, I got Bill Armstrong in Utah. I think with them moving,
that's a pretty good pick.
With them moving to Utah, like it was the first year being there. You kind of want to have a good year. I think they have had a good year, right? Like they've been playing in meaningful games. They've been close to a wild card spot. You look at like some of the moves he made, right? Like you bring in Sergachev. I love that move. I love that move. They really did get a top pairing defenseman there. I think one of the most underrated parts of him too is like people don't realize like right before the season started, he locked up Gunther to a 7x7.15. And I think if Gunther was signing right now, he could argue he'd probably get 9 with the cap going up. So I think that move should be part of this as well. You know what I mean? Even the Vejmelka deal, right? Like they've locked him up now. I think when you look at some of the signings he's done and when you look at some of the trades he's made, I think he's done a phenomenal job.
Bringing in Oli Mata, dude, when they lost Dursey and Marino and he played top 4 minutes. Like, I don't know, man. Those are the moves that got to be recognized when you're considering an award like this. And
then for me, at my 5 spot, I got Steve Stamkos in Ottawa. You look at what he did. It really started in the offseason with getting rid of Jacob Chychrun, right? Like, that was a very slept-upon trade just because Chychrun was probably the bigger name in that deal. But let's be real, man. Nick Jensen for the Ottawa Senators, like, he's been phenomenal. He's really helped out that decor.
I really feel like that trade has worked out really well for both teams. As much as Chychrun is a better defenseman, Jensen has been a solid defenseman his entire career.
The thing is, Chychrun's probably the better player in that deal, But Nick Jensen is exactly what Ottawa needed. They needed a veteran defenseman who can shut things down, who can help help
Play top
Chabot
4 minutes.
help out Sanderson, get those guys learning more. I think he's started with doing a phenomenal job there. You look at trade deadline, you bring in Zetterlund, man. That might have been one of the biggest rip off trades this trade deadline, right? Like
Cousins
you
comes
bring in
in.
Cousins as well. I think he's done a
You
phenomenal
trade for Linus Allmark last year and get out of
yeah.
Korpisalo's contract. He's done a lot of good things, man. I think he'd probably be my number 6, if anything.
The other thing with him is I think if Ottawa goes on like a really good playoff push, like I think there could be a possibility maybe he does win the award, right? Like if Ottawa wins a series or if they go to the conference finals, like you're gonna have a hard time telling me that Steve Stamkos is not worthy of that award if Ottawa finds success here in the playoffs. Let's get into the player awards though now. The first one we have up, it's the Calder. This one honestly might be the closest reward out of all the awards this year. Mark, I don't know if we're gonna have unanimous winner here. I got Lane Hutson. Bring me the heat. What he's done as a rookie defenseman, dude, it's like it's been unreal. Who do you say is the last rookie defenseman to sort of put up the numbers that Lane Hutson has put up?
It's been I forget who it was. Fuck, I'm trying to remember, but I know that if he somehow got to 70 points, I think he'd be the most ever by a rookie, or it's most since Chelios or something like that. I don't know if he'll actually get there, but I don't really know, dude. I think it's like Brian Leach kind of territory, if you ask me, but I don't really know the exact numbers for that. But yeah, dude, he's been fucking incredible.
And for me, the biggest thing that I think with him is that he really is your guys' number one defenseman, right? I'd say he's your number 100%. One defenseman. He's running the power play. He's playing the big minutes. And the other thing too is
he's playing the fucking right side now too. It's crazy. He's playing his offside now.
The other thing too with him is he's on a team right now that's really pushing for the playoffs, and he's a big part of that. Like if Lane Hutson isn't on the team this year, I wouldn't say that you guys are in a wild card spot. Maybe you guys aren't far off.
No shot. Like I think Matheson would probably be putting up better numbers like he did last year, but I don't think we'd be getting the kind of the same impact. You know what I mean? So no, I don't disagree with that at all, man.
And I'm looking at the numbers right now. The last defenseman to have a season like this was Quinn Hughes. He had 53 points in 68 games his rookie year. Lane Hutson's probably going to end the season closer to 60. So I gotta go with my boy Lano. Who do you have winning the award?
Man, it's really funny that we're picking opposites here. I'm actually going with Dustin Wolf, dude. The more I've thought about this award, I think that he really deserves this award, especially if you guys do get into the playoffs. I just think this guy's impact as a goaltender on a team that really had no expectations this year besides being a lottery team. And he's turned into the starting goalie, and it's not just that he's starting most of the games. It's like he's playing really well, putting up great numbers. I was reading a tweet from earlier saying that the last time a goalie won Rookie of the Year was Steve Mason in 2009, and Steve Mason also finished 4th for Hart voting that year, which is kind of crazy to think about. This award, like you said, is so freaking hard to decide, man. I think the top 3 could go either freaking way. And I honestly think that Wolf's got a pretty good chance to win this award, especially if they get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think Wolf's a good pick. For me, I went with Celebrini at 2, just because he's almost a point per game in his rookie season. And when you look at sort of what he's playing with in San Jose, he doesn't have a whole lot there, right? Like Will Smith and Tyler Toffoli are his two best players he's playing with. They don't got a whole lot going on there. I think Celebrini has definitely lived up to sort of the hype that we were talking about him coming in to with this regular season. I got Celebrini at my 2. I do have Wolf at my 3. I just think it's so close, man. Like the thing with Wolf is if the Flames don't make the playoffs, I don't know if Wolf will get that like recognition just because he is a goaltender.
I
But
was thinking about that, dude, but we're also looking at Celebrini, who's nowhere near the playoffs.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So it's just like I don't really know how to judge that. And I get that he's incredible, but it's just like if I use that excuse for Wolf, it's just like how do you not use it for Celebrini? And I know it's different, but like I don't know. I just don't really think that should be part of it. Well, dude, all three of them could miss the playoffs.
yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? So it's just like I don't really know. Honestly, 2, I went with Hudson. 3, I went with Celebrini. That might sound insane, but it's like I have no real good reason to put Celebrini 3. Like I don't have a legitimate argument besides the fact that I don't know. Maybe they'll consider Hudson. Maybe he's got a little bit more points than Celebrini, even though Celebrini's played less games. But Hudson's a defenseman. Like I don't really know. You know what I mean? Like it's like you could go either way with these 3, and I think I'd be fine with it.
Same.
You know what I mean?
Like, which is insane because there's still some decent talent here that's going to miss out. Like, who do you have at 4? I think 4 will probably.
I went with Michkov at 4.
Yep. I went with Michkov at 4. I just think when you look at the top 3 this year, it's like they're all having realistically they're all having historical rookie seasons. I think when you look at like other years, I think in most other years, if these 3 guys were rookie, they'd probably win. Or
yeah, I mean, it'd be obviously a debate with Bedard, and you know what I mean. But like Matty Beniers the year before, like all 3 of these guys, probably honestly, dude, maybe even Michkov too would probably win it.
Yeah.
Like over nothing against Beniers and Power, right? But I mean, it's just I don't feel like it was anywhere near the same kind of dominance that we had this year. It is different being 19-18, but I mean, Celebrini's also 18, right? So.
And then who do you have at your 5?
There's a couple options that you could go with here. I went with Cutter Gauthier. I think that he's kind of improved a ton this year after not really putting up points the first like 10 to 15 games. I mean, he's kind of closing in on that 40-point mark. There are a couple good options here. I'm sure you probably got one of them as your number 5.
For me, I went with Will Smith. I think him and Cutter.
That was one of them I was thinking of.
Honestly,
the other guy I was kind of considering 2 for 5 was Stankoven. I feel like maybe he's been a little bit more underwhelming though, but Will Smith's not a bad pick at all.
I think it's really the top 3 and everybody else is the way I'm kind of looking at it. It's the top 3. I think it's the top 3. You have Michkov at 4, who's like somewhat close, and then it's.
Do you not feel like he's kind of like getting snubbed a bit though? Like to be fair, like snubbed in the sense of like. I would agree that he doesn't deserve to be there this year, but dude, he's going to put up like possibly 25 goals and 50 points and not even be nominated. Yeah.
And back to what we were saying about like in every other year, like one of those 3 guys might be winners. Like in every other year, Michkov would be either the runner up or like a finalist without a doubt, right? I think it's just
100%.
I think it's this year when you just look at guys that are coming into the league, there's a lot of talent, man. There's a lot of talent that came into the league this year on their rookie deals, right? Next up, we're gonna have the goaltender award. It's the Vezina. This one's gonna be unanimous. Mark, Connor Hellebuyck's one.
At least number 1, it is. It's Connor Hellebuyck, dude. There's really no debate here. He's been fantastic. About to go back to back for Vezinas this year, and also a year where we're scoring. Scoring isn't up, but save percentage is down. He's still putting up an elite save percentage. So I think easily he's going to be winning his 3rd Vezina this year. And he's the best goalie in the NHL right now.
For me, my 2 and 3, I think our 2 might be the same. Let's start off with you, though. Who do you have at 2?
2, I got Logan Thompson. I think he's been phenomenal this year. I actually think that he's kind of shortened the ground between him and Hellebuyck for 1 over the past couple months, but I still don't think he's like that close to him, especially games played. I think that makes a difference when you're kind of going for this award here, right? But I think he's been phenomenal, man. I think that a lot of people didn't expect this out of him coming over from Vegas. He's turning into a really good starting goalie, and I mean. I think he's 100% going to be at least a finalist for this.
Yeah, I got Thompson at my 2 as well. He's been phenomenal since going to Washington, dude. I think if you didn't have Connor Hellebuck playing in the NHL, I think Logan Thompson would be running away with this award this season based off the way he's played.
Yeah,
At my 3, I got Andre Vasilevsky.
I do too.
He's been very good for Tampa this year, dude. He's a 920 save percentage, which is
he's been quietly back, dude.
yeah. Like I think the thing with him is just since Tampa's always so good, and since he's been so good for so many years, he just doesn't maybe get as much recognition anymore as he used to, right? Just because we're so used to it from Vasi. It's like if he's not putting up these numbers, it's like, holy shit, like what's going on with him? We're just so used to him putting up these numbers year in, year out. I think we're just used to it and don't appreciate it as much.
100%.
Who do you have at your 3 and 4 or 4 and 5 partner?
I think that when you start getting into this, there could be kind of guys like I wouldn't be surprised if we've got different 4s and 5s here. Evaluating from a goaltender's perspective, I don't really like to just go off like save percentage because I think that's not really a great way to judge a goalie, especially if they're not on a good team. Number 4, I went with Lucas Dostal. I think he had a terrific start to this year. He honestly hasn't been terrific throughout the entire season, but I really feel like he's been a top 5 goalie in the NHL this year. And of course, like the shot quality he's faced, his save percentage obviously went down. He was rocking like a 920 now. We think he's at a 907, but I think the Ducks would be in a way worse situation if he wasn't playing the way he's playing right now. Number 5, bro, I went with Dustin Wolf, dude.
Really?
I honestly feel that he's been debatably close to a top 5 goalie in the NHL this year. I really do. Yeah. I don't think he's going to get nominated for this award at all, but I think that he needs some recognition. There was kind of a couple other guys I was debating to put in there, but I think his impact on this team, it should not be ignored.
For me, at my 4, I went with Philip Gustafson in Minnesota. I think Minnesota, they've had a phenomenal year this year, and he's been really helped out with a lot of that success. I think really since the new year, they haven't been playing as well, too, and there's been a lot of games where he's kind of holding them in it, keeping them in it. I think for sure I have to have him at my 4. Even depending how the rest of the season goes, I think maybe I could have him as a finalist and take Vasilevsky out depending on how the year goes. I think he's been really that good for
what? Sorry to interrupt. What would make you do that? Like, would Minnesota have to jump to like a top 3 spot in the division, maybe? And like he's playing some good hockey.
I think if Minnesota jumps to a top 3 spot and he's still putting up the numbers that he's putting up, I think at that point you have to.
Because they've been decimated with injuries. I agree with you that the beginning of the season, stats-wise, probably the same as Dostal, looked a bit better. But, like, the way they've been dealing with Kaprizov's out, and then this guy's out, and then that guy's out, and they're still getting really solid goaltending, right? So I think that he was kind of one of the guys I was flirting with to add to the top 5, and it's not a bad choice at all.
For me, just based off the fact that I don't want to say saving Minnesota's season, but let's be real. If he's not having the year he's having, like Minnesota's maybe just outside of the wild card spot based off how decimated by injuries they've been this year, right? And then at my 5 spot, I going with Linus Ullmark in Ottawa. The thing with him that's
not a bad choice, dude. Not a bad choice at all.
He doesn't have a shit ton of games played. He's at 37 right now, right? So he'll probably end the year off with around 45 games played. But I just think with Ottawa's going to be making the playoffs this year. With how important he's been in Ottawa's success this year, that's just why I have him at 5. But I like the picks you have. Like Dostal, he's had a phenomenal year in Anaheim, and Dustin Wolf, same thing. Really good year as a rookie as well. He's very meaningful to that Flames team. I just think with Ottawa and Minnesota being playoff teams, that's just sort of why I have them in my 4 and 5.
No, that's completely fair, dude.
I think it really kind of is the top 2 or 3, and then it is sort of like you have maybe 5, 6 guys there as the next sort of tiers guys that you could have as getting a vote. We're going to move on to the Norris. Mark, I think similar to the Vezina, this one's a lock for a certain player. I got Cale Makar winning the Norris this year. Who do you have?
I do too. I feel like we probably have the same players in the top 3, maybe just kind of maybe interchangeable a bit, but I've also got Makar winning this award this year.
So who do you have at 2 and 3 then?
I'm going to be honest. I got Werenski at 2, Hughes at 3. I think that if Hughes didn't miss those 12 games, it would be a lot. He'd either be in the 2 or it'd be a real debate.
Yeah.
But Werenski's been incredible at the same time. This is another one where it's like I feel like some people might have Hughes winning it.
See, so for me, I got Makar winning it. I just think with Hughes, he's missed the games, so it's a bit hard to put him as the winner over Makar. But I got Hughes as my 2, just because based off the fact that when you look at Vancouver and when they were missing him, like Vancouver did not look good whatsoever, dude. They looked very bad, and then as soon as Hughes comes back, they're starting to look better when he's in the lineup. And even when he has been playing in the lineup for them, like he has been bumped up at times, and he's still playing close to 30 minutes a night or 25 plus minutes a night when he is banged up, right? So it's like playing that amount of minutes banged up and really running that entire blue line as he has. For me, that's why I have him at 2. I got Werenski at 3, but for me, it's super close between Werenski and Hughes, who would get my second vote. Werenski, he's had a phenomenal year this year. Like, he's been a big part of Columbus's success and sort of the playoff push that they're on. Mark, who do you have at your 4, though?
Did you feel after the top 3 you had to start thinking about it a lot more? Or did you have like a clear guy that you were kind of like, he's the number 4, he could probably be nominated?
I had to start thinking about him a fair bit more, to be honest.
Okay, because I did as well. I mean, I think there are some good options. I just think it's like a whole tier kind of down from the guys that are nominated. You know what I mean? Number 4, I went with Mikhail Sergachev, dude. I think that he's made a huge impact in Utah, offensively and defensively. I actually believe that he's playing some of the best defensive hockey that he's ever played in his career. And I don't know if it's because he's kind of relied on as a number 1 guy now. Bro, he is eating so many fucking minutes, man, with Utah. And I look back and I just can't believe they got him for like the price they did, man. Like he's to me now like easy a top 15 defenseman in the NHL. Like probably even top 10 next season. I love the way he's playing both sides of the ice right now. And I think that he's kind of a guy you could look at next year and his points might even go up more.
So for me at my number 4, dude, I went with Rasmus Dahlin on Buffalo.
Okay.
The fact that he's +1 on the year. The fact that he's a +1 on the year with how bad Buffalo's been all fucking year long, dude, is kind of insane, right? Like you'd think this guy would be like -10 at this point in the year with how bad Buffalo's been. I think he's putting up points this year on Buffalo. He's 54 right now, right? He's like not that far off being a point per game for the Sabres this year. And he's been somewhat good defensively for them, where this team has not been good whatsoever. He eats minutes. Dude, I think if you put Dahlin on like a true contender, I think he'd be within the top 3 in the North voting, and it wouldn't even be close. Like I think if you put him on a true contender, you could make an argument that he would be like a Norris winner.
See, man, that's not a bad choice at all. And I am a Rasmus Dahlin. I like him a lot. Like I firmly believe if you kind of dissected all the defensemen in the league over maybe let's say a 2-year sample size, because that's how I like to kind of grade players and goalies. I think you can make a very strong argument that he's a top 10 defenseman or top 5 defenseman in the NHL. Yeah.
I just
like top 5 even, dude.
I'd agree with that. I think it just hurts so much that he plays for Buffalo, right? But it's
the thing is that's just hilarious is he's really fucking good defensively.
Yeah.
And they're on a terrible team that doesn't play a lot of good defense. But people don't realize that if he was not playing this well defensively, they'd be even fucking worse. He plays half the game and he's actually playing good defense. Like, you know what I mean? So that's not a bad pick, man. It's honestly a good pick.
I think, like, okay, if you were to switch him and Cale Makar, I think, like, I'm not saying he'd be Cale Makar level, but if you were to swap him and Cale Makar out, put Makar on the Sabres and put Dahlin on Colorado, I think you'd probably have Dahlin as like
almost like swapping Rantanen for Natchez.
similar to that dude. Like I think Natchez is a top.
Bit different, but
You know what I mean? I just think it's. I just think he's that good, but just being on the Buffalo Sabres, it's such an asterisk for him, dude. It kind of sucks. I feel bad for the guy. Who do you have at your 5 then?
as much as I hyped up Rasmus Dahlin there, I didn't pick him as my number 5. I went with Victor Hedman, dude. I know people are gonna say, "Oh my God, yeah, again, he was 5 years ago." Bro, I'm telling you right now, Victor Hedman has improved a lot from the last 2 years to this season.
Yeah,
He was not playing good defense at all over the last 2 years, and I think that a lot of people realized that Tampa's defensive game went down, and I think he realized it as well. His points per game isn't kind of where it usually is. It's a little bit down, but I think that's because he's committing to play defense more. And I think if you look at it on a two-way scale, he has been definitely a top 10 defenseman in the NHL this year. And I would argue he's pretty close to the top 5, and that's why I'm putting him at number 5.
Yeah, that's a good one for me. It was between Hedman and the guy I have at 5. I went with Evan Bouchard though. I just think when you look at the Oilers' decor that they had for most of the season, like it was really him and Ekholm, and he's kind of been the guy there this year. I think he's putting up points. Been he's been all right defensively. He hasn't been great, but he hasn't been brutal. I just think
I'm going to be honest with you. Sorry, I keep interrupting you, but like I think that the Evan Bouchard defensive narrative gets a little bit overblown. Like, you know, sometimes he has these like brain dead turnovers.
Yeah.
Dude, it's because he's got the puck on a stick more than like 98% of the defensemen in the NHL. People aren't looking at the plays that he's making. They focus on the brain dead turnovers, which aren't great, I will admit. But dude, he's not bad defensively, like at all. Like at worst, he's average. Like he's not even bad at it. That's what blows my mind, dude. It's not, your pick is not bad at all. Like with Bouchard there.
See, that's the thing with him is like he has times where he'll have a turnover like that. But yeah, I agree with you. It's because when you look at that Oilers defense core, it's like if he's not breaking the fucking puck out, who is, man? Like I guess Ekholm's their next best, but even Ekholm, he's not like the best. He's not.
Well, probably Wall now, but he just got there, right? Like
he just got there. I just think for the Oilers and Bouchard, it's for how much of a role he takes on in that defensive core, and how important he is to the success of getting like, if he's not getting the puck up to McDavid and Draisaitl and those forwards that they have, like those forwards are going to be picking the puck up off the boards half the time, right? And I just think with Bouchard, I got to acknowledge him and have him in my top 5 there. I think, like, let's be real, the Norris, the top 3, like the top 3 is going to be Makar, Hughes, and Werenski. I'm not saying in that order, but those are going to be the 3 finalists this year, and then it's going to be everybody else. Like, I don't think any of the other guys that we mentioned there, like realistically, I don't think any of those guys are going to be a finalist, but I think those are still guys that you kind of do have to acknowledge, where it's like, yeah, they're having pretty good years.
I'm curious to see the like after the award is handed out, when they release that list of kind of everyone who got votes, I'm really curious to see how the voting goes outside the top 3. Same. Like, is it Sergachev? Is it Hedman? Is it Dahlin? Like, who do people think? Like, dude, honestly, Hudson might get a couple votes, probably no like top 3 votes, but he might get like a top 6 vote. I don't know. You know what I mean? A Montreal writer. So I'm curious to see how that goes once that's released.
Speaking of the offensive game, we're going to go with the trophy for the best defensive forward. It's the Selke. I think this one, the winner, it's a runaway. I got Barkov winning it. Mark, is there any debate here, or is it going to be Barkov winning it and running away?
I mean, I think some people could debate some other players, to be honest with you, but I think that he has, in accordance to like just kind of more time on ice and stuff like that. Like, I think that he's got a pretty big argument over a bunch of guys, and I will say I don't think it's like as much of a runaway as like last year, but like, I mean, I think that he still deserves it again.
Yeah, I just
that's just my opinion.
I just think when you look at his matchups, the players that he's going up against, face-off percentage, like he can play the penalty kill, man. His minutes on ice, I just think like I think there are some guys that should get recognition. I just think for like how good Barkov is defensively and how many minutes he plays in the matchups, I just think it's hard not to give it to him, right? Um, who do you have at your two spot? Because I think I might have an interesting one or an off the board one, but
I think that I have an off the board one. I really like this player, to be honest with you, and I think that with him producing a bit more offensively this year could get some recognition. I actually went with Anthony Cirelli.
okay, that's a
I think that he's been a really solid defensive defenseman. He's like basically in like the 97th percentile of a bunch of defensive metrics this year as a forward.
yeah.
Kills penalties as well. And I think that was a reason why Canada took him too, right?
Oh
He's
yeah.
just kind of really good on both sides of the ice. I'm not really 100% convinced he will be nominated compared to some of these other guys, but I personally think he should. I think he's been one of the best defensive forwards in the NHL this season.
It would definitely be interesting to see if he's nominated or not. Because for me, I have two wingers in my top five here, and wingers historically like don't get a lot of votes for the Selkie. It usually
Yep.
goes to centerman a lot more. So I wonder if just based off the fact that he is a centerman, right, and not a winger, he will finish as a finalist. For me, at my two spot, I went with Barkov's teammate Sam Reinhart. I think he as a winger is very defensively responsible, especially for how good he is offensively. He plays the penalty kill, and even on the penalty kill, he's putting up offensive numbers. I believe he may lead the league in shorthanded goals this year. For me, I got Sam Reinhart at my two spot. Um, I don't know how you feel about that, if that's off the board or not.
Well, to be honest, I've got him at my 3 spot. So, I mean, like, I think that he should probably be nominated as well. I think that Reinhardt's been an elite defensive winger basically his entire career. Even before he started producing offensively, he was still always a really effective player. And I feel like that was kind of why I felt like that trade with Buffalo was kind of weird at the time. I was like, dude, if this guy ever explodes offensively, like he's going to be a hell of a player. Like he's always been defensively responsible. If he's always kind of cared about that part of the game. And I think he should have had a nomination like by now over the years. But I think that he definitely will get nominated this season.
Yeah, for me at my 3 spot, I went with Nico Hischier. When you look at the matchups he's playing for New Jersey, right? Like you got Jack Hughes there, so he's not having to put up the most offensive numbers. But I think Nico Hischier, when you look at the matchups, he really is sort of taking on that shutdown centerman type of role. He is playing against other teams' number ones. I think I gotta have him in my top 3. When I look at all the players on my list, I think it is super close between sort of 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think any of these players could be a finalist, but I also sort of went with a Swiss bias and have Nico Hischier there in my 3. Moving on to my number 4, I got Toronto Maple Leafs, Mitch Marner. He's always in the discussion for the Selke. I'd say it's like when you look at the top defensive sort of wingers around the league, I'd say it's Sam Reinhart and Mitch Marner, right? Like they're both playing penalty kill.
And Mark Stone.
And yeah, Mark Stone as well. I guess the only thing with Mark Stone is just the reliability health wise for him, why it's a bit harder for him. I just think with Reinhart and Marner, they're playing penalty kill. They're playing the big matchups. They're getting the takeaways. They're both really good with their sticks. So I got Marner in my 4 spot. Mark, who do you have at 4 though?
I actually went with Jack Eichel. I think that he's played some really good defensive responsible hockey over the past couple seasons. I think that may have been what kind of held him back of being a superstar in Buffalo. And I think that he's getting the matchups every single night against these top guys, and he's really learning how to shut down top players. And I think it might be possible he sneaks into the top 3 here, but I think that he needs some recognition on the defensive side.
Yeah, Jack Eichel's a pretty good pick too. For me, when I really started noticing how good he was defensively was that Four Nations face-off tournament. Like I know the voters like aren't really having that in mind because it's on NHL regular season games, but watching that, I really did appreciate like, wow, Jack Eichel has really taken a big step defensively. I don't have him on my list though. For me, At my number 5 to wrap off my list, I had Anthony Cirelli, the guy you have second. I think you said it great, man. Like he has been so good for Tampa defensively. The minutes he plays, the guys he goes up against the ice on, he plays a pretty feisty role too, which I love, dude. Right? Because I wouldn't say any of these other guys on my list are like guys that are really throwing the body around or getting in the mix of things, right? Where Cirelli is, but so for me, I have him at 5. I do think he could jump up in the list though and really be a finalist depending on how people vote. Who do you have at your 5 though?
Bro, you're going to be so shocked at my number 5. I honestly went with this guy because I've seen back-to-back elite years of really good defensive hockey from a forward. I know the offense isn't quite there yet, but if it gets there, he's going to be a hell of a player. I picked Matty Beniers. Dude, he is actually really fucking good defensively. He knows how to shut down some of these top guys, and I think once he figures it out offensively, dude, he's going to start being looked at as a real elite player in this league. I'd say right now he's more of like a second-line center, just because those offensive numbers aren't there, but man, has he taken a huge step in his defensive game and learning how to shut down these top guys. He's looked really good on that side, and I honestly would have him as a player that's going to really pop off in the next couple of years, I think.
Yeah, that's a great pick, dude. I really do like Beniers a lot. I just think with him being young though and not having that offensive production, maybe voters won't recognize him as much. But I think he's a guy that could maybe get nominated, but for sure will be on that radar over the next.
I think you should keep an eye on him for years down the road, though. Like, you know what I mean? For a Selke finals for sure.
Mark, let's move on to the last player award we have here before we get into our made up ones. It's the Hart. This list, this is where I think it is actually the most interesting this year, for all the awards of who could win it. Who do you have in your number 1?
Bro, this was tough, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to get straight into it. I went with Nathan MacKinnon.
Okay.
I debated between my number 2 is Leon Draisaitl. I debated really hard about both of them because I think they both deserve it. My deciding factor was kind of more what MacKinnon has had to deal with in accordance to shit goaltending, roster turnover, injuries beginning of the year. Like, they were not a good team to start the year, and they maintained a 500 record. And I just think that he's been an absolute menace this year. I've got him 1 and Draisaitl 2. I think Draisaitl's been fantastic as well. And he could probably win, dude. But that was where I was like, you know what? I'm going to MacKinnon.
So for me, I'm going with Connor Hellebuyck, dude.
Here we go. I knew it. I knew you were going to do it. I knew it.
I'm going with Connor Hellebuyck. Man, he leads the league in goals against average. He leads the league in save percentage, and he leads the league in shutouts. Like,
he's my number 3.
With Leon, I think it's hard because he's missing time right now, right? So it's a bit hard there, just based off that he might not have the games played compared to some of these other guys. But dude, I just think when you look at Connor Hellebuyck, dude, I think it's hard not to say he's the most valuable player to his team. Because
no, I don't really disagree, but I kind of disagree with the Draisaitl thing, dude. Like, when you look at it at the end of the year and he's got like 10 more fucking goals than anyone else and he missed time, like, I don't know.
I think that's fair. I have Draisaitl in my top 3, but I just think Connor Hellebuyck this season he's having, like, it's a historical season for a goaltender. And I think.
So do you have MacKinnon 2 or Draisaitl 2?
I got MacKinnon at 2, based off the fact
and
that. And
Draisaitl 3. Okay.
For me, the reason I have MacKinnon at 2 is he's dealt with more this year compared to Draisaitl in terms of like what's been going on with the teams. So I think he sort of has that little tiebreaker over Draisaitl. And then also the fact that Draisaitl is missing time right now, I think, is another kind of reason I have MacKinnon at my 2 and then Draisaitl at my
If it only ends up being like 4 to 5 games, though, overall, do you really think that that's like going to be a huge factor?
Maybe not a huge factor, but it definitely is like a little. I not a huge one, but I'd say it is a little bit one. I'd say just when I'd say more when you combine the two, where it's that and the fact that MacKinnon's like had his line mate trade, like his best line mate traded mid-season, the whole goaltending thing, the whole fact that they got off to such a slow start and McKinnon was really putting that team on his back there for the first month and a half of the season. I just think when you kind of combine those couple things, why have Nate Dogg at my two? I think it's super close though, man. I think this is maybe one of the closest awards we have. Who do you have at your 2 and 3 though?
So I got McKinnon 1, Draisaitl 2, Hellebuck 3. So I got the same 3 guys as you, but just different orders.
I think, and dude, I think it's a toss up to be honest, man.
Yeah, this is kind of like the Calder, where it's like I feel like a lot of them could be really interchangeable.
And I'm just looking at for the whole Connor Hellebuck debate. I'm looking at the last goalie to win a Hart, who was Carey Price in 14-15. It is hard because Price did have decently better numbers that year.
In a year, though, where goals against was more down, though, like that year compared to now. You know what I mean?
It is pretty comparable, though. Price had a 196 goals against. Hellebuck has a 208 this year. And then Price had a 933 save percentage. I believe Hellebuck's this year is a 924. So it is pretty comparable.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 3 though, it's gonna be super close. Who do you have at your 4 and 5?
Number 4, I've got Kucherov. I think he's kind of having an under the radar, really sweet season again. And then number 5, I'm going with Jack Eichel. I think that he's kind of helping carrying Vegas this year. I think he's got like 25 more points than the next guy or something like that as well. They've been dealing with injuries up the middle too. William Karlsson now hurdles out. So I think he's kind of having an under the radar, really good year. Like, dude, he's got 87 points, bro. He might get 100 points here.
Yeah. For me, my 4, dude, it really depends a lot on if this team makes the playoff. But I got Zach Werenski at my 4.
See, do you not find it weird that you have Makar winning the Norris, but Werenski winning like a higher in the MVP?
Somewhat, but it's like when you look at the Norris is given out to the best defenseman, the best defenseman that year, right? Like I think Makar has been the best defenseman this year, but when you look at the Hart where it goes to the MVP, like I think you can make a decent argument if Columbus does make the playoffs that Zach Werenski is the most valuable player to his team.
See, I actually don't disagree with that, but I don't think they would vote it that way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they look at it as the most valuable to your team, even though it's phrased that way. I don't disagree with you putting him there and ranking him that, but I don't see it happening where Werenski's like coming second for the Norris and then like 4th in Hart. Like, I just don't see that outcome from the voters.
No, that's fair, dude. I think I'm also maybe just looking at it a bit different and sort of looking at it the way I want to look at it instead of looking at it the way the voters look at it. Because to be honest, I really disagree with the voters a lot of the time. So, and then at my 5, I got Kucherov. He's
been awesome, dude. It feels like every year he's kind of under the radar and never talked about enough as how elite he is. You know what I mean?
But yeah, Jack Eichel, he's a good one there to have in the list. I probably could have gone there maybe instead of Werenski, but I just got to give my love to Werenski, you know. Moving on 100%. to the awards that we've kind of made up here. This is kind of where it gets interesting, and I think where we might see a lot of different answers between the two of us. We're gonna start off with the best defensive defenseman award. And I've already gone ahead and I've named this award. Do you want to hear who have named it after?
I think I could guess, but yeah, you can give it to us.
It's the Jacob Slavin Award.
Yeah.
It's the Jacob Slavin Award. That's who's winning it in their first year is Jacob Slavin. I have him winning it this year. He's winning the first ever Jacob Slavin Award. Do you have Slavin winning as well, Mark, or is it going?
I do, dude. He's been absolutely elite, a monster defensively, and he's been actually even better than he was last year, which is hard to believe as well. So, I truly believe that not just this year, that he is right now the best defensive defenseman in the NHL, and it's been like that for a couple seasons.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Selke, where you had like the run of Kopitar winning it for a bunch, Bergeron won it a couple years right in a row. You have Barkov now who's sort of on his tear. I think similar to the Selke, like Slavin would win this award probably the last 3-4 seasons. Um,
Yeah.
who do you have at your 2 and 3 spot as the other two finalists?
Okay, number 2, I got Gustav Forsling. Number 3, I got Chris Tanev.
Okay.
Think they've both been really good. They're eating a lot of minutes, top pairing, putting up some really good defensive results this year. And honestly, before this year as well.
For me, at my 2 spot, dude, I went with Ryan McDonough. I think when you look at how good he is defensively, it's hard not to have him here in my top 3. He eats minutes, dude. He's playing just over 20 minutes a night this year for Tampa. I think there's a real reason why Tampa wanted to bring this guy back and bring him into their lineup, right? And you're sort of
Yep.
seeing what he does. Dude, I love the way he plays. He blocks shots like fucking crazy. That's why I have him at my 2 spot, and then at my 3 spot I have Gustav Forsling. He's phenomenal, dude. And the fact that this guy was picked up off waivers is fucking nuts. But hey,
100%.
you'll get some guys like that. Who do you have as your sort of honorable mentions, 4 and 5?
So I got Ryan McDonough at 4. I agree. I think his impact on Tampa has been incredible this year, coming back in, eating minutes. Excuse me, one of the best shot blockers in the NHL. My number 5 might be a little bit off the board, but I mean, I truly believe that this guy is already super elite defensively. I went with Alex Vlasic on Chicago.
Yeah.
I think now, especially with Seth Jones gone, you're going to start hearing a lot more of him. I personally believe he's better than Seth Jones all around, but he's huge, 6'6". He's got a really long stick. He's blocking shots, eating minutes for the Hawks, and honestly, he's looked pretty good doing it. So a little bit off the board pick maybe there, but I just wanted to give him some recognition because I think he's an elite defensive defenseman already.
Yeah, so for me, at my 4 spot, I went with Jake Sanderson. I think he's been a great shutdown guy. Great shutdown guy for Ottawa this year. I think maybe he doesn't get enough recognition for how good he is on the defensive side of the puck, just because he is pretty good offensively and able to put up some decent offensive production. And then at my 5 spot, I got Chris Tanev. I think Chris Tanev, you probably could have him higher up on this list. I just think that when you look at all these other guys here that I have on my list, like they're all playing a full season or close to a full 82 games, where Chris Tanev has dealt with a little bit of injuries and missed some time this year. So I just have him a bit lower on my list for this season. But I think if you're looking back,
I'm not convinced the margin really between a lot of these guys is like that much though either, right? Like
yeah.
It's also hard to really fully judge defensive, like, you know what I mean? It's like how much stock do you take into block shots and stick checks in accordance to like man-on-man pressure and you know what I mean? And like, so it is hard to really actually judge, but it's like, bro, I don't know. Some people might have Chris Tanev too. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, see, maybe someone thinks he's better than Slavin. Like, to be honest, like I don't, but like, it's not like that insane of like something to say. You know what I mean? Like, they're all really good defensively, like everyone that we mentioned on this list.
Yeah, it's definitely a award. I think this award is probably, like, out of all the ones that we made up, I think this is honestly probably the one I would like to see added most and actually given out in the NHL. Just because, like, let's be real, dude. The Norris has become a lot more about the offensive side of the puck compared to the defensive side of the puck. I'm not saying that all these guys winning the Norris and getting nominated are not good defensively, but I just think they're, like, with how important defensive is in hockey and how big of roles some of these guys have on their teams, just because they're so good defensively. Like, I really would like to see this award given out. And I know there has been a lot of talk within like media members about there should be an award for this. So hopefully one gets added here. Now the next award that we sort of made up here, it's It's called a Most Improved Award. It's pretty self-explanatory. We don't have a name for this yet, so we might have to come up with one after we've given our top five.
Well, we got to see if we both have the same number one, we should call it that. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. Mark, who do you have at your number one then?
Okay. This is hard to judge too, right? Because it's like, how much of an actual improvement is it? Like when you're comparing these guys, right? Yeah. Okay, I went with Zach Werenski in the sense that I already thought he was an elite defenseman, but I think he jumped from an elite defenseman to a superstar defenseman, where we're literally talking about Zach Werenski's probably a top 5 defenseman in the NHL. I'll be honest with you, I probably thought he was more in the 15 to 20 range coming into this season.
Yeah.
That's the way I kind of judge this, and I think the overall impact is just so big that I went with him at number one.
So to be honest, I don't even have him on my list. So I don't think we're naming the award after him. For me, I guess the thing with Zach Werenski is just the reason I didn't have him on my list, because honestly, I was thinking about having him on my list, but it was just like, when I looked at Werenski, I'm like, man, like he's already shown that he can be elite though. Like he's already shown that, like, so many signs, right? It's just, I think it was just a lot of.
I get that. I get that. That's why I just kind of phrased it the way I did. It was like, you know what I mean? It's just.
I get it. I think it's a safe pick. For me, I went with Brandon Hagel, man. I think.
Really? See, I thought about him, but like he already had really good numbers last year too, though.
I think he did have really good numbers last year, but I think you can make the argument that last year his numbers, like he's already broken his total on last year, right? Like,
see, I'll be honest with you, Brandon Hagel's not even on my list.
Really?
Yeah, that's funny that we don't have number ones.
Too, it's also hard though too, because it's like you could have a guy that's maybe like had fucking 10 points last year the entire season, and this year had fucking 35 points, right? It's like you could have that, or you could have players like we're going with, right, where it's like maybe they're taking that leap from being like a no doubt top 6 forward to kind of like an elite player, right? I just think with Hagel, he really has taken that step, right? Like last year, he did have a pretty good year, but I think last year we still sort of looked at him as being more of like a top 6 player, where now I think Brandon Hagel, you can really make the argument that he is like an elite player in the NHL.
And you know that's fair.
Who do you have at your 2 spot?
I went with Alexei Protas on Washington. I think that he has made a fucking massive step this year, dude. Like, we're talking about a career high of 29 points last year and 6 goals. A guy who's up to 29 goals and 63 points in 70 games. 6'6" monster of a power forward. Literally is like, it seems like he's playing like a lower tier first line player right now, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I just think the jump that he has made has been absolutely incredible, dude. And I think that we should be, I think a lot of people do notice it, but I think a lot of people don't at the same time.
That's a good one. For me, at my 2, dude, I went with Logan Thompson.
Okay.
Dude, he went from this time last year being like a kind of 1B goaltender. Maybe you can make the argument that he was a more of like a really good backup last year, to now being second in the Vezina conversation. I think he's had a phenomenal year in terms of proving what he is, and that's kind of why I went with him at my 2. At my 3, I went with Protas as well. When you look at him and how good he's been this year, just even the point totals, dude. Last year, he went from 29 points in 78 games to 63 points in 70 games this year. Like, he's almost at a point per game, right?
Bro, his career high in goals was 6.
Yeah, and he's going to have 30 this year.
Did you see the thing that so they signed him to a long deal last year? It was 3.3 by 5. And did you hear that, like, his agent went to him and they were like, they want to give you 3.3, and he's like, really? He's like, don't they think that's high? And he said, I'd signed it in a heartbeat. And it's like crazy to think now that a year later that he signed an absolute bargain.
Yeah. And even, dude, looking at his shooting percentage, man, his shooting percentage was 5.3% in 23-24. This year it's 22.1%. It's like he
Might not be sustainable throughout his career, but it's like I don't have really any doubts that he's going to be a consistent like 50-point player going forward.
yeah, even if his shooting percent goes to like 15-16%, like around there, it's still
Yeah.
pretty good. Yeah, he's in my top three. I have him at three. Who do you have at three though, Mark?
I had Logan Thompson at 3. I think exactly everything you said, kind of like a 1B goalie going to like an elite starting goalie, um, should definitely be recognized 100%. And I think that he's having a great season.
It's kind of funny. Our number ones weren't even, we don't even have on each other's list, and then our 2, 3 we have them, but we just swapped them. So we
Yeah.
kind of are thinking somewhat alike with it. Who do you have at your 4 and 5 though?
Number 4. This was tough, dude. I feel like there was a couple guys I left off that I really wanted to put on. Number 4, I went with Ryan Donato in Chicago. I think he's having a hell of a fucking year, dude. If he puts up 7 more points, he's going to be doubling his career high in points this year. He's at 53 in 69 games. He's got 25 goals this year. The most he ever had was 16. I think this guy, I don't know if it's just a blip this year. Like, you never know with some of these guys, right? They score 20, 25 goals, and then they kind of regress. But I think in accordance to most improved, you can't really deny of how much he's improved this season. So I got him at my number 4. Number 5, I went with another goalie. I already mentioned him, Lucas Dostal. I think at last year, I think that he was kind of more of a backup guy. Does this guy have a really high ceiling? Is he going to be just kind of like a normal NHL goalie throughout his career? And I think that a lot of people had him as an elite goalie prospect heading into the NHL. And I think you can really see why this year. And you saw me, dude, I think he's been a top 5 goalie in the NHL this year. And I think he came from going from like a average backup to like a starting goalie this season. So I've got Dostal at 5.
Both those are pretty good picks. I didn't even think of Donato, to be honest. I was really more looking at like younger players, I guess. For me at 4, I went with Kirill Marchenko in Columbus. I think he's really had a breakout.
He just stayed off my list, dude.
Yeah, I think he's had a breakout offensive year this year. He went from 25 points his first year in the league to 42 second to 62 this year in 66 games, right? So like he might be a point per game by the end of the year. I think when you look at the success that Columbus has had this year, he's really been a massive part of that, and he really is getting a lot of ice time as well for a forward. He's playing just under 19 minutes a night right now as a forward for Columbus. Like he has had a pretty massive year and a pretty big breakout year here for Columbus, and that's why I got him at my 4 spot. And then at my 5 spot, this one might be a little bit questionable. You'll have to maybe tell me after, but I got Martin Necas at my 5 spot. I think with him, like you always sort of saw the potential with him that he could be an elite player, and he's really turned into that this year. 75 points in 71 games, dude. He's got 24 goals. He'll probably be a 30 goal scorer this year. I would maybe think that he could hit that. I got him at my 5 spot. Do you think that's maybe not, or like
I agree with the mentality. I personally think maybe top 5's a bit of a stretch. Like I'd probably say like top 15. I guess I kind of look at Necas the way you look at Werenski in that situation, where it's like he's already a bona fide top 6 forward. Definitely taken a big step this year, but I think a lot of people knew how good of a player he already was, kind of thing, you know? But I guess I wasn't really considering him at all. I didn't really kind of think about him when it came to that, but I don't think that's like a bad pick in any way, dude. Like, no, I like that's a pretty solid pick. And it's not like you had him at like 1 or 2 either, right? Like you had him at 5.
yeah. I'm trying to look online too to see if there's any other people that they kind of have mentioned here, but I'm not really seeing too much here for this season. It's more for last season.
I honestly I kind of thought I had honestly Marchenko was kind of my 6. What do you think about this? I flirted with Nick Suzuki a bit, but I just felt like maybe the improvement wasn't big enough to put him in like top 5. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like maybe he's kind of like 2015 to 20 kind of thing. But another guy I was kind of thinking about too was Connor McMichael with
Yeah.
Washington. He's kind of taken a huge step this year as well. But yeah, there's been kind of a bunch of guys, dude, that I feel. And honestly, dude, another guy I really honestly thought about a while was Anthony Stolars.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I'm looking too now online. I even see Marco Rossi too. That could be a guy that could be
That's a pretty good one,
potentially,
yeah.
and I'm up for it. But the ones I'm looking at right now, outside of Rossi, it's all the similar guys to what we said. To be honest, I think we gotta. I think I gotta redo my list, and I put Protas at number one, and I think we gotta name the award after him.
I
Especially,
mean, I'm okay with that, especially if you were trying to move him to at least 2, and then it's like at least we
yeah.
both kind of have him as the top guy. Yeah, I'm down to call it the Protus.
For me, especially the fact that it's like this guy was drafted in the third round, right? Like when he came to the league, there wasn't really like a lot of expectations, and now you're like, man, this guy's like a legit top six.
And for listeners listening, keep an eye on his brother. Like his brother was
Yeah,
drafted by the Caps in the 3rd round last year. Literally almost identical pick numbers in the draft, both in the 70s. Plays for Windsor in the OHL this year. I think he's flirting with 120 points right now. Big guy, just like his brother. It would be pretty cool to see them play together in a couple years. And I think that he's going to be an absolute monster as well for the Caps.
okay, Mark, since you mentioned his brother, I'm on his hockey DB right now. With Windsor this year in 61 games played, do you know how many points he's roughly at?
Okay, I checked last week and he was at 117. I'm going to say he's at 120.
He's at 124.
Okay. Wow.
And he's still 18 as well. He's still 18.
And like, if you guys want to like look at comparisons, Liam Greentree, who's on his team, was drafted in the 1st round last year and is talked about it being a really good pick at 23. Is Protus outscoring him right now? Or it's really close.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could think about Protus maybe should have been a 1st rounder.
Dude, this family's turning out to be legit hockey players. I'm excited to see.
I'm just curious what they did over the summer. What did they do in the summer?
It's the Russian gas. It's the Russian gas.
Yeah. It's the Belarusian gas.
The Belarusian gas, yeah. It's just a little bit better, right? But dude,
Yeah.
can you imagine these two in a line together in a couple of years? It's going to be something to see.
Should we call it the Belarusian Gas Award?
That's a great fucking name. The Belarusian gas.
Okay.
You can hand it out to like multiple leagues as well, right? Like it doesn't just have to be an NHL award. Guys in the O could win it. Guys in the Q could win it. These next 2 awards, there's some pretty fun awards too. This next award, I already went ahead and named it. It's called the Biggest Fall Off Award, aka the Jonathan Huberdeau Award. Again, pretty self-explanatory award. It's given to the player that has the biggest fall off from one season to the next. Mark,
You go first. I want to hear. You go first this time.
I'm gonna go through my top 3 here because I'm gonna say my top 3, and then I'm gonna go into hiding because there's gonna be a lot of Swedish people out to get me. A lot of Swedish people out. Number 1, I got Elias Lindholm from the Boston Bruins. My first runner-up is Elias Pettersson of the Vancouver Canucks, and my third runner-up is Mika Zibanejad of the New York Rangers. 3 Swedes here to get the award kicked off with. I'm gonna go into hiding. I'm never going to Sweden. I gotta stop the Zins. They're gonna be poisoning my Zins after this. You seem a little surprised by this. Who did you have as your 3?
I'm surprised at your 1, to be honest with you. I honestly, I thought about Lindholm, but my mentality was that I didn't really think he was that good going into this season anyway. Like, I felt like after that 40-point year, he's been continuously dropping off. Like, I don't think he went from 40 goals to this, right? That's kind of why I didn't even put him on.
For me, I guess the way I looked at it was like he signed as a free agent in Boston, right? Like they signed him 7 years, 7.25, whatever it was. Like they're really paying him to be their number 1 line center, and he is not been
I
that
guess I kind of
whatsoever.
feel the same way about it as I feel with you picking Natchez for the most improved. Like,
Yeah.
I think he'd probably be in my top 15 to 20, but I think top 5 is a stretch. You want me to go through my 3 now? My top
Yeah.
3?
What's your 3?
Number 1, I got Jeremy Swayman. Number
Okay.
2, Elias Pettersson. Number 3, Gustav Nyquist.
Okay.
Swayman, dude, I think that he's going from a debatable top 5 goalie in the league, and he's been really struggling this year. Like, I think that I don't know if this is going to be a one-off kind of thing. He's proved in his career that he's been way better than this consistently, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of rebounds, but I think that the fall off this year cannot be ignored at all. Patterson, we all kind of know. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
He's been falling off this last calendar year. Gustav Nyquist, this was a guy that had 75 points last year, and he's even flirting with 30 right now. I think it's a massive drop off for him. I honestly haven't really been following him too much with Minnesota. I don't really know how he's been doing, but I think he had around like 26 points with the Preds this year before the deadline, maybe.
Yeah. Well, no, he's 23 right now, so he had
In
less
total.
Yeah, he's 23 total right now. So he
Oh
would have been
boy.
like maybe.
So he's legit, like he has a third of what he had last year.
Yeah. He's For me, I don't have him on my list. I was debating throwing him on there, but for me the one thing with him is the age. Like he's 35, so I didn't put him on the list just because it's like how much of it is just like the natural regression that you're going to see from older players, right? Where it's like Swayman, who you mentioned, that's in his prime, right? Like that's a guy that like should not be having regression. That guy, that's a guy that should be actually improving this year based off his sort of age, right? For me,
Yeah.
I have Swayman at my 5. I thought you were gonna rip me for having Swayman at my 5. To be honest, I know you're a goalie guy. You're the goalie guy on the podcast. I really debated putting Swayman at 5 just because there's the whole goalie aspect, and it's like, dude, goalies are so up and down, right? It's like,
No, but I mean, I am judging it on this year, right? So
yeah,
it's like I can't really ignore, because the thing is with Swayman is like December, I think it was, or January, he had a really good month, and it seemed like he
yeah.
was going to kind of turn it around, and he really hasn't. So I still love the guy. I still think that he's got the potential to be an elite goalie. I don't know if this is just a blip or the team or whatever, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that he's fallen off the most out of any player in the league this year.
No, I think really these 5 guys that I have here and that you have too, like could all win it. Who did you as your 4? Who do you have as your 4 and 5 though?
Number 4, I went with Steven Stamkos. Number 5, this might be a little bit of a hot take. I went with Ryan Lindgren.
Okay.
Stammer, obviously, we know hasn't been performing really well. And I think just Ryan Lindgren, you look at him more as he was a pretty effective top 4 shutdown defenseman. And I think it's to the point where he's kind of looking like a number 6 D-man.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of funny because I have another New York Ranger on my list here. I went with Chris Kreider at 4. He's not been good whatsoever this year. The guy went from 40 goals last year, 39, to 19 this year. So he's half the goals that he had. He had 70 points, 75 points last year. Pardon me. He's 23 points this year. So not even half.
23 points?
Dude, he's 4 assists this year. He's 19 goals and 4
Fuck,
assists.
I probably could have put him on my list. I didn't realize it was like that.
It's been a not great from whatsoever. I have him at 4, and then I had Swayman at 5. So
I like Mika pick too. That's a pretty good pick.
we have a fair bit of similar players. For me, I think the reason I just had Pedersen and Lindholm higher up on my list maybe was just because they are guys in their prime, right? Like, and I think it's a lot easier for goalies to have a bad year than it is for a forward.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's go on to our last award that we have here. It's the opposite of the biggest fall off. It's the comeback player of the year. And the way I'm kind of looking at it is because we do have most improved, right? So it's like they are, I guess, a bit similar to the awards, but
See, I the way I rank this award is like they kind of like were good and then fallen off, and they're kind of back to that level, or at least close to
yeah.
that level. You know what I mean? Or maybe even exceeded it. That's the way I kind of went about this award.
Or even like a guy that maybe had injury problems, something like that, right? But
Yeah.
let's have you kick it off. And who do you have your number one?
My number one, I actually, there was a couple people, honestly, I think most of my list I actually considered at number one. I went with Pierre-Luc Dubois in Washington. He's already gotten 60 plus points. He had 40 last year. The one thing I don't think a lot of people are realizing about Dubois this year, dude, is his commitment to defense.
Yeah.
I think that he's playing such a good defensive game. He's a fucking pest to play against. I'm actually really starting to like this player again. And I honestly believe that he is probably the best comeback player of the year this year.
Yeah, so that's the name of the award because I had PLD as my number one player winning the award this year. It's kind of funny because if you had this award for the last 5 years, PLD could have won the fall off player of the year last year and the comeback player this year because that could be a possibility in our little hypothetical award show. But yeah, PLD, he's had a pretty good year for Washington, big part of their success. I think when you look at how bad he was last year after signing that contract, with LA and then coming over to Washington this year, the trade, like Washington was taking a pretty big gamble there, right? Taking on that cap hit for how long that contract was too, right? Because it's, what is it, 6 years after this year, I believe? 5 years after this year, something like that, right? I think
he only played the one in LA, right?
Yeah. But he really has been a lot better, and he is showing that he really is a top six forward in this league, I guess.
Yeah.
For me, at my number two, it's kind of funny here because I actually have the guy that PLD was traded for, Darcy Kemper. I think he's had a really good bounce back year. He's been very good for LA so far. Who do you have at two, though?
That's a really good one, dude. I don't have him on my list, but if I redid this, I may have put him on. I actually went with another goalie. I went with Andrei Vasilevsky, dude.
Okay.
I think that he was just kind of more of an average goalie the last 2 seasons, and he's shown why he's elite again. That's kind of my reasoning for putting Vasi there. I kind of flirted with him. I had him at 4, and then I was like, he's actually like a Vezina finalist, so maybe it's more of an impact than I think. So, I mean, I got him at 2. I'd be willing to move him down the list, though. But I just think that he's been incredible this year.
Yeah, I got Darcy Kemper's numbers in front of me now. Last year with Washington, he had a .331 goals against and an .890 save percentage. This year with LA, he has a .213 goals against and a .918 save percentage. So, like, that is a really big flip around in the numbers he's putting up here with LA now. I like the Vasilevsky one, though, too. He is a goalie that, I agree with you, I would say he was probably maybe average or just above average the last couple of years, and now this year he really is back to his normal self and being an elite goaltender. For me, at 3, I went with Patrick Laine, the Montreal Canadian. For me, it's partially too because this is a guy really that it's felt like it's been a while where he hasn't been at the top of this game, and yes, it has been a shorter amount of games he has played this year for the Montreal Canadiens, but he has had a fair bit of offensive production for you guys, and I sort of got him there in my 3 spot. Like this was a player that 18 months ago was in the player assistance program, right? And now he's close to a point per game player for the Montreal Canadiens. Who do you have as your second finalist, though?
Second finalist, I actually went with Colton Parayko in St. Louis. I think that he's having a monster season, but I think he had a couple seasons where he dipped a little bit and was looking more of like a top 4 defenseman. He's already gotten 10 more points than he had last year. I think he's got 15 goals. Was an absolute monster at the 4 Nations for Canada. I was honestly getting to the point where I didn't even think he was worth his contract anymore, but I think now he's worth at least that, probably more. So I've got him in my number 3 spot. That's
a pretty good one. I think honestly, after you mentioning his name, that's probably a guy that could be an honorable mention in the defensive defenseman award. I know neither of us had him on our list, but he's a guy that sort of could maybe be on a list there. for me, moving on to my 4 and 5 spot, I got Barrett Hayton sitting at my 4 spot. I'd say he's a bit different to these other guys, where these other guys really are putting up like very good numbers for their teams. Where Barrett Hayton,
Yeah.
he has 39 points in 70 games this year, but when you look at that compared to the season before, like he played 33 games the season before and had 10 points, right? So really not much of a factor. And now this year he sort of has become a decent sort of middle of the lineup centerman for Utah. And then at my 5 spot, I went with Rickard Rakell on Pittsburgh. I think with him, he had a couple down years, and now he's really back to being a very good player. Last year, 22 points in 70 games. The year before last year 37 points in 70 games, and this year he has 62 and 71. So he's really had a massive bounce back year for a Pittsburgh Penguins team that really has not been that great this year. Mark, who do you have those your 3 and 4 there to wrap up the award?
4 and 5. Yeah, I got. So I actually got two. Both of my guys here are guys you've actually mentioned already. Number 4, I got Rickard Rakell. He was bad last year. He was good the year before, though. He had 28 goals, then he went down to 15. He's back to 32 now. He's had a huge impact this year. I think he's probably going to finish with 35 goals. And my number 5 is Patrick Laine. I think that he's had a huge bounce back. I know he's only played 37 games or whatever it is this year, but I think that his impact has been incredible for the Habs, especially on their power play. I actually really regret not putting Darcy Kemper on this list more than I think about it. I think that's actually a really solid pick.
I think both of our lists were pretty good. I think the Vasilevsky pick was a good one, maybe having him over there over Kemper. Overall, though, PLD, dude, he's winning the award, and I don't think it's too close.
Yeah.
That's going to wrap up our awards here, though. We went through a fair bit here with all the awards that actually do exist, and then all the ones that we sort of want to see maybe get added at some point. Mark, I'll ask you this, though, because we added 4 awards. Before we wrap up the show, out of the 4 awards that we added, what are the 2 awards that you most want to see become like a reality?
I think the defensive defenseman, 100%. And then they would never do something like the biggest fall off. So I think probably most improved. I think that they might argue that comeback player is almost like the one, what's the award when they get, like the one that Letang won a couple of years ago, that remember because he came back from cancer. Yeah. It's like the award. It's like when they go through like a huge, like a battle in their life, you know what I mean? And they come back from it. What is that award called?
First Letang Award, Bill Masterson.
Like, to be honest, I think Laine's got a decent shot at that this year. He's probably going to be a finalist, I think. But yeah, I don't know. It's I think that they might argue like a comeback player is almost kind of like that. So I think I'd go with most improved and the Jacob Slavin Award.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, dude. I'd go with the Jacob
Belarusian Gas Award.
And the Belarusian Gas. Those would be the 2 most fun to see in the NHL. And like when you look at like other leagues too, there are other leagues that have the most improved. Like the NBA has the most improved award. They don't have the Belarusian Gas.
Could you imagine they actually named? Could you actually imagine if they actually went with a biggest fall off award?
Dude, that'd be sick, man. I'd love that.
I know. Imagine Swayman and Pettersson and Mika Zibanejad sitting there.
You have like the fans vote and stuff.
You got to say a speech after too.
Oh, dude. I'd like to thank JT Miller for just absolutely abusing me in the showers after games. Really made me question why I still play hockey and why I haven't requested a trade. But I'd like to give him a shout out. Now he's in New York. Have fun there, boys. I'd love to see that. Overall, though, that's going to wrap up the show for today. It's going to be fun keeping a close eye here on the last stretch of the season, sort of with some of these closer awards, what players may take a step or may separate themselves in the case for winning a certain award. we're going to be back next week, probably talking about the last couple week or two of the NHL and sort of where things are at. Really, as we get close to the playoffs, we'll have some more clarity there. So for everybody tuning in this week, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week.